The 30th of January, 1933. Adolf Hitler is appointed Chancellor of Germany, bringing an end to German democracy. A critical component of his rise to power is the Sturmabteilung, or SA, a paramilitary organization associated with the Nazi Party, now counting more than 3 million members. Soon, its leader, Ernst Röhm, will start to demand the removal of German elites from power and their replacement with fanatical Nazis. However, Hitler needs the support of these elites, particularly the military leadership, to consolidate power, and ultimately sees the SA as a threat. During the Night of the Long Knives, he murders the leadership of the SA, effectively ending their political and military power. But the purge does not stop there. It extends beyond the SA to include old rivals and perceived enemies. One of the most prominent victims is a former chancellor, a decorated general, and one of the last men who tried to block Hitler's rise. His name is Kurt von Schleicher. Kurt Ferdinand Friedrich Hermann von Schleicher was born on the 7th of April, 1882 in the town of Brandenburg an der Havel, then part of the German Empire. His father was a Prussian officer, and military tradition ran deep in the family. At just 14 years old, Kurt began training at a military school for future officers, where he formed early connections with classmates who would later rise to power, including Oskar von Hindenburg and Erich von Manstein. He was commissioned as a lieutenant in 1900 and promoted to Oberleutnant in 1909, a rank equivalent to first lieutenant in the US Army. That same year, he was selected to attend the prestigious military academy in Berlin, where he met Franz von Papen, a man who would later become both his political ally and his rival. By 1913, Schleicher had joined the German General Staff and received a promotion to Hauptmann, an equivalent to captain. During the First World War, which lasted from the 28th of July 1914 to the 11th of November 1918, he served at the Supreme Army Command and later became Chief of Staff of the 237th Division on the Eastern Front. This was the only period he spent near the front lines. Schleicher was not a battlefield commander. His real strengths lay behind the scenes. By the end of the war, he had reached the rank of Major, and he had become a close associate of Wilhelm Groener, who played a key role in stabilizing the military after the collapse of the monarchy. After the German Revolution of 1918 to 1919, which led to the end of the German Empire and the establishment of the democratic Weimar Republic, Schleicher played a major role in preserving the independence of the military. He helped negotiate arrangements that allowed the army to remain a largely autonomous institution, acting almost as a state within a state. In 1919, Schleicher helped establish the Freikorps, paramilitary groups composed of former soldiers, which were used to suppress leftist uprisings. Throughout the Weimar Republic, he continued to defend the army's interests and expand its role in German politics. In the early 1920s, Schleicher worked closely with Generaloberst Hans von Seeckt and joined a secret group called Sondergruppe R. This organization cooperated with the Soviet Union to secretly rebuild Germany's military strength. In exchange for money and technology, the Soviets allowed German officers to operate and train in Soviet territory. Although he denied involvement in public, Schleicher also helped form the Schwarze Reichswehr, which were illegal military units notorious for assassinating people they considered traitors. Both activities, the cooperation with the Soviets and the creation of the Schwarze Reichswehr, enabled Germany to bypass the Treaty of Versailles, which held Germany responsible for starting the war, and limited the size of the German army to 100,000 men. Schleicher rose rapidly through the ranks. He was promoted to Oberstleutnant in 1924, Oberst in 1926, and Generalleutnant 3 years later, which was an equivalent to Major General. In October 1927, Schleicher married Elisabeth, a member of the long-established von Henig's aristocratic family. The marriage did not produce any children, although Elisabeth had a daughter from a previous marriage to Schleicher's cousin Bogislav. In 1929, Wilhelm Groener, now Minister of Defense, created a new position called the Ministeramt for his protégé Kurt von Schleicher. It was designed to manage communication between the military, the navy, and politicians. Schleicher used the position to expand the army's influence over national politics. He also built a network of journalists, civil servants, and friendly politicians, gathering and spreading information to advance his goals. After the 1928 federal election, Schleicher and Groener grew concerned about the rising support for the political left. They believed that parliamentary democracy stood in the way of restoring Germany as a strong military power. Schleicher convinced President Paul von Hindenburg that the constitution could be used to install a government without parliamentary backing. He relied on constitutional powers that allowed the president to dissolve the Reichstag, the German parliament, issue emergency decrees, and appoint or dismiss the Chancellor. This strategy made it possible to bypass the Reichstag entirely. In 1930, Schleicher helped remove Chancellor Hermann Müller and replaced him with Heinrich Bröning. This marked the beginning of presidential governments, which ruled without majority support in parliament and relied on Hindenburg's emergency powers. At the same time, Schleicher began secret talks with the Nazi Party. He believed that their paramilitary wing, the SA, could be absorbed into the army and used to unite the nation. In particular, he developed a relationship with Ernst Röhm, the head of the SA, who shared Schleicher's vision of a militarized German state. Schleicher even changed army regulations in 1931 to allow Nazis to work in military supply depots. After the July 1932 elections, the Nazi Party became the largest in the Reichstag, and Hitler demanded to be made Chancellor. Schleicher supported the idea, but President Hindenburg refused. Meanwhile, Franz von Papen, the Chancellor of Germany, whom Schleicher had pushed into office in June 1932, started to act independently, and Schleicher turned on him. Using a falsified report claiming the army could not control the streets in case of an emergency, Schleicher forced von Papen to resign. On the 3rd of December 1932, Schleicher became Chancellor of Germany. He tried to split the Nazi Party by offering a government post to Gregor Strasser, one of its senior leaders and the head of its more left-wing faction. Schleicher hoped to weaken Hitler's hold on the party, but Hitler quickly removed Strasser from leadership and preserved party unity. Despite these setbacks, Schleicher introduced an ambitious public works program to reduce unemployment. He planned to create 2 million jobs by the summer of 1933. Many of these ideas were later adopted by the Nazis, though they were originally Schleicher's initiatives. However, Schleicher's government was weak from the beginning. Most of his cabinet members were unpopular holdovers from von Papen's administration. He also made a careless joke about Oskar von Hindenburg, the president's son. Schleicher sarcastically called him the political mastermind of the Reich, a remark that offended Oskar and further reduced Schleicher's influence. In foreign policy, Schleicher demanded equal status for Germany at the World Disarmament Conference. He hoped to end the arms restriction imposed by the Treaty of Versailles and eventually reintroduce conscription. He also tried to improve relations with France, hoping that France would end its alliance with Poland. Schleicher's long-term goal was to divide Poland in partnership with the Soviet Union. By January 1933, Schleicher was losing support rapidly. He requested a decree from Hindenburg to dissolve the Reichstag and extend its recess so his economic plans could succeed. However, Hindenburg refused. At the same time, von Papen began plotting behind Schleicher's back. He met with Hitler and convinced Hindenburg that Hitler could be controlled within a conservative coalition. Schleicher was unaware of these meetings until it was too late. On the 28th of January 1933, Schleicher went to Hindenburg to request emergency powers, but the president refused, and Schleicher resigned. 2 days later, Adolf Hitler was appointed Chancellor of Germany, and the Nazis quickly moved to consolidate power. Schleicher's allies were removed from the army leadership, including Generalmajor Ferdinand von Bredow, Generalmajor Eugen Ott, and Generaloberst Kurt von Hammerstein-Eckwardt, who resigned in protest. By the spring of 1934, Schleicher was considering a return to politics. He believed he could mediate between Hitler and Röhm, whose relationship was rapidly deteriorating. Some of Schleicher's supporters even proposed a new government in which Schleicher would become vice-chancellor and Röhm would serve as defense minister. But Adolf Hitler had decided to act. On the morning of the 30th of June 1934, during the purge later known as the Night of the Long Knives, SS men in civilian clothing arrived at Schleicher's villa in Potsdam, a city just outside Berlin, at around 10:30 a.m. Schleicher was on the telephone when he heard a knock at the door. His final recorded words, overheard by the person on the line, were, "Yes, I am General von Schleicher." A moment later, the SS opened fire. Schleicher was shot and killed in the hallway. He was 52 years old. When his wife Elisabeth rushed out to help him, she was also shot and succumbed to her injuries en route to the hospital. At their funeral, SS guards removed wreaths, and mourners were closely watched. Schleicher's friend, Generaloberst Hammerstein-Eckwardt, was not even allowed to attend. However, Generalfeldmarschall August von Mackensen and Hammerstein-Eckwardt led efforts within the army to rehabilitate Schleicher's name. On the 13th of July, Hitler addressed the Reichstag and claimed Schleicher had been plotting with Röhm and the French ambassador to overthrow the government. Though the accusations were false, Schleicher's reputation for political scheming made many Germans believe it. However, the French ambassador André-François Poncet remained in Berlin, which clearly contradicted Hitler's claim. In 1935, under pressure from senior army officers, Hitler privately admitted that Schleicher had been shot by mistake, and his name was quietly restored to his regiment's honor roll. Newspapers did not report the news, but the army considered the matter closed. Privately, however, the Nazi leadership continued to spread accusations of treason. For many Germans, Schleicher remained a symbol of the dangerous political maneuvering of the Weimar years, a man who believed he could manipulate everyone, and even outsmart Hitler, until he became a victim of the very power games he once controlled.
Thanks for watching the World History channel. Be sure to like and subscribe, and click the bell notification icon so you don't miss our next episodes. We thank you, and we'll see you next time on the channel.